Beyond the festivities, how has Christmas influenced politics and conflicts over the years? We have a special report for you, but first, the headlines. China accuses the US of trying to thwart its improved ties with India. Beijing claims Washington is distorting its defense policy to achieve that goal. China says it views relations with India as strategic and long-term and asks Washington to quote-unquote not pass judgment on its border issue with India. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visits a nuclear submarine factory and oversees the test firing of long-range surface-to-air missiles. Kim also received a message from Russia's Vladimir Putin, who hailed the quote-unquote invincible friendship between the two countries. Pyongyang and Moscow have strengthened their ties since the Ukraine war began nearly 4 years ago. Turkey arrests more than 100 alleged members of the Islamic State. Ankara says they were planning attacks during New Year celebrations in the country. The police carried out raids across Istanbul to make the arrests. Several pistols and ammunition were also seized. In Australia, an empty car with a Hanukkah sign is set ablaze in Melbourne. Hanukkah is a Jewish festival. The police have launched an investigation. This comes just weeks after the mass shooting at Bondi Beach. 15 people were killed in the attack, which took place at a Hanukkah festival. And Somalians vote in local elections in the capital, Mogadishu. These polls are the first ones in nearly 60 years. Mogadishu is under lockdown amid security concerns. The polls are a test of the direct voting system championed by Somalia's president. In 1969, direct voting was abolished in the country. It's been a dramatic week for Bangladesh. Deadly unrest, diplomatic tensions, a fragile peace, and now a massive homecoming. A homecoming that could reshape Bangladeshi politics. We are talking about Tarique Rahman. He is the acting chief of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or the BNP. It's now the largest political party in the country. If they win the upcoming election, Rahman will be the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, which is why today was a big deal. You see, Tarique Rahman had fled Bangladesh in the year 2008. He'd been living in London ever since. So he's returning after 17 long years. We'll tell you more about his exile, but first, look at the pictures. The BNP promised a mobilization like never before. They were planning to bring around 5 million people to Dhaka. You can see the pictures on your screen. 5 million may be a stretch, but hundreds of thousands for sure. A sea of BNP supporters camped in the capital overnight. They awaited Rahman's return this morning. His flight from London touched down in Sylhet first. It's a city in northeastern Bangladesh. The plane had a layover there. It was carrying Rahman, his wife and their daughter. He posted pictures online as they entered Bangladeshi airspace. From Sylhet, they flew to Dhaka. And that's where Tarique Rahman disembarked. He was welcomed by top leaders of the BNP, and outside the airport, thousands had gathered. I must say the optics were on point. Once outside, Rahman took off his shoes. He stepped onto a grassed area and took a handful of soil. Take a look. At the airport, Tarique Rahman also spoke to Mohammed Yunus on the phone. After that, he left to address his supporters. The BNP had organized a bulletproof bus for him. It took nearly 2 hours for Rahman to reach the rally stage. He was surrounded by supporters throughout. Tarique Rahman is political royalty in his country. His father, Ziaur Rahman, was Bangladesh's president and he founded the party, the BNP. His mother, Khalida Zia, was the prime minister. She was the chief rival to Sheikh Hasina. Tarique Rahman fled Dhaka when a military-backed regime was in power. This was back in 2008. Some reports say that he was tortured in custody. Later, Sheikh Hasina came to power, and during this time, Rahman was convicted in multiple cases. Some were linked to corruption, some others were linked to assassination plots. Now, the BNP says all these cases were politically motivated. And so Rahman stayed in London. Then, in August last year, Sheikh Hasina was toppled. And on cue, the cases against him were dropped. meaning Tarique Rahman could return home. I know these pictures suggest a grand homecoming, but he's returning to a very tense situation. Interim leader Mohammad Yunus has lost control of law and order. Relations with India have hit rock bottom. Islamist mobs are running riot, and there are major doubts about the February polls. Will they be held at all? And if they are held, will they be fair? It seems like Tarique Rahman knows what he is up against. He spoke to his supporters for 18 minutes, and his speech had two main promises: one of peace, stability and communal harmony, and two of a national plan. Rahman invoked Martin Luther King Jr. MLK said, "I have a dream." Rahman said, "I have a plan." Listen in.
প্রিয় ভাই বোনেরা, আজ আমাদের সময় এসেছে সকলে মিলে দেশ গড়ার। এই দেশে যেমন পাহাড়ের মানুষ আছে, এই দেশে একইভাবে সমতলের মানুষ আছে। এই দেশে মুসলমান, বৌদ্ধ, খ্রিস্টান, হিন্দু সহ বিভিন্ন ধর্মের মানুষ বসবাস করে। আমরা চাই সকলে মিলে এমন একটি বাংলাদেশ গড়ে তুলব আমরা, যেই বাংলাদেশের স্বপ্ন একজন মা দেখেন, অর্থাৎ একটি নিরাপদ বাংলাদেশ আমরা গড়ে তুলতে চাই। আই হ্যাভ এ ড্রিম। আজ এই বাংলাদেশের মাটিতে দাঁড়িয়ে আপনাদের সকলের সামনে আমি বলতে চাই, বাংলাদেশ জাতীয়তাবাদী দলের একজন সদস্য হিসাবে আপনাদের সামনে আমি বলতে চাই, I have a plan.
So Rahman is promising to protect minorities. Let's see if he backs it up with actions. But his main slogan today was, "I have a plan." I know it sounds very simple, but look at the situation in Bangladesh. Yunus and his buddies had no plan to stabilize the country, no plan to preserve the economy, no plan to protect the minorities. In that context, Rahman is promising a plan, something concrete that Bangladeshis can bet on. Again, let's see if he backs it up. After the speech, Tarique Rahman visited his mother, Khalida Zia. Like I said, she is a former Prime Minister of Bangladesh. Her health has been dwindling. Khalida Zia has been hospitalized since last month, and that had left a vacuum at the top, a vacuum that Rahman is hoping to fill. The question is, what does his return mean for Bangladesh, and what does it mean for India? During Sheikh Hasina's days, the BNP had allied with the Jamaat-e-Islami. Both were seen as radical groups. But there's a key difference between the two. The Jamaat is driven by pure Islamist ideology. The BNP, as the name suggests, is driven by Bangladeshi nationalism. And these differences sharpened after 2024. First, Tarique Rahman broke off his alliance with the Jamaat. Then he made a veiled jibe at them. He hinted that people had seen the collaborators of 1971. That's a reference to the Jamaat. Because in 1971, the Jamaat opposed Bangladesh's liberation. They sided with the Pakistanis. So the BNP's overall strategy seems to be this: project a more liberal, a more nationalistic ideology. And it's evident in Rahman's moves, whether it's taking a pinch of Bangladeshi soil or sharing images of his cat. That's right, Tarique Rahman has a cat named Zebu. It's become quite a celebrity among the youth. But will this moderate strategy work? That's the big question, I guess. On the streets, we've seen a clear Islamist turn. If that is the real Bangladesh, then the strategy may backfire. But if these radicals on the streets are just a tiny minority, then Rahman's strategy may work. As for India, it's a game of patience. New Delhi has crossed swords with previous BNP regimes. But this time, there is no alternative. The Indian envoy has met BNP leaders multiple times. I guess the thinking is, it can't be worse than Yunus. And this approach is mutual. The BNP has not escalated the issue of Sheikh Hasina's stay in India, nor have they made provocative statements against New Delhi. So it's not an embrace. It's more of a convenient reset. Of course, this is all in the future. The immediate question is, can the man with a plan win Bangladesh? Before we move on, we have a message for Bangladesh, not for Mohammed Yunus or his cronies, but for the ordinary Bangladeshi citizen. I know there's a trust deficit between our countries right now. Your leaders have painted India as some big villain. But here's the truth. India wants peace and stability in your country. We don't want to see violence. We don't want to see deaths or lynchings. We want to see peace. And this is not just an emotional confession. This is also a strategic reality. We share a 4,000-kilometer long border. We share deep commercial ties. Why would India want instability and chaos in Bangladesh? The truth is, we don't. But it's a convenient narrative for the new Bangladeshi leadership. No law and order? Blame India. Politician shot dead? Blame India. Economy not stabilizing? Blame India. It's a bogeyman that Yunus has created. But we are telling you that bogeyman does not exist. The problems you're facing are internal. If you don't believe us, listen to Osman Hadi's own brother. He blamed Yunus for the situation leading to his killing. He said Mohammed Yunus was trying to derail the elections. Nowhere did he blame India. So it's time to cut through the fog of propaganda. India wants to see a stable, thriving Bangladesh. New Delhi is not meddling, not escalating, but waiting patiently for you to elect a new government. A government with a mandate to speak for you, not the sham regime run by Mohammed Yunus. The most powerful border in 2025 was not always drawn on land. Sometimes it was drawn on screens. And this week, the United States drew one. 5 Europeans were denied entry into the US. They were not given visas. Europe has called it intimidation. Washington says it is just defending itself. And with this, the US-EU relations have hit a new battleground. Let's break it down for you tonight. First of all, what exactly happened? On December 23rd, the US government made an announcement. It was banning funds from entering the country. The reason given by the Trump administration was alleged censorship. That's why these people were banned, alleged censorship. So who were the banned individuals? These were not just any other Europeans. These were high-profile European regulators and figures in digital governance. And among them was Thierry Breton. He is the former EU Commissioner for the Internal Market. Breton is the main architect of the DSA, that's the Digital Services Act. The DSA is the EU's rule book to regulate social media platforms, and the 4 others were also anti-disinformation campaigners. Which brings us to America's argument. Marco Rubio, he said that these people enabled extraterritorial censorship. In fact, let me quote from his social media post. For far too long, ideologues in Europe have led organized efforts to coerce American platforms to punish American viewpoints they oppose. The Trump administration will no longer tolerate these egregious acts of extraterritorial censorship, which is why Rubio invoked the Immigration and Nationality Act. And what is that? Well, this act allows the US to deny entry to anyone if their presence has serious adverse consequences. And this is not a one-off, this standoff. It's not the first such case. This is the latest escalation in a long-drawn battle. The Trump administration says they're fighting censorship, a censorship industrial complex. That's what they've called it. They're fighting a censorship industrial complex. It is made up of governments, regulators, and platforms. They work in sync to police speech and restrict tech. That's what the White House says. And they say they're fighting against it. And how did Europe respond? Well, their leaders are furious. French President Emmanuel Macron has called it coercion. He said, and I'm quoting, "It's an attack on European digital sovereignty." Germany has called it unacceptable. Spain calls it censorship, and the UK has expressed concerns. After all, 2 of those banned were British citizens. Europe says it could retaliate diplomatically or economically, not because they want to fight America, but because they see this as a challenge to sovereignty. And like I said, this is not new. For the last 6 months, Europe and the US have been arguing, especially over who controls the digital world. This month, Europe issued its first ever penalty under the new act. It was a $140 million fine on X. But here's the important detail. The fine was not for refusing to censor content. Europe says it fined X for lack of transparency. Elon Musk, however, called it censorship. He publicly attacked the European Union. Earlier this year, the US also imposed 15% tariffs on European goods.
Thank you very much.
Brussels said it accepted the tariff deal, but digital rules were left out of negotiations. Now, Washington suggested that that was not enough. It wanted Europe to soften its digital enforcement. Europe refused, and the US retaliated with the visa bans. For years, big tech, American big tech companies operated like digital empires. Meta, Google, X, Amazon, they all followed their own rule book. So now Europe cracking down on them is like planting a flag, and it will be worth watching how this battle progresses. There are two ways it could play out. One, this digital Cold War heats up. There are more fines, more bans, more retaliation, more distrust. Or two, a negotiated truce follows. Both the US and the EU try to carve out a fragile balance, a balance between free speech and regulated speech. Well, whichever direction it takes, one thing is quite clear. This is no longer just a policy clash. This is a fault line, a new divide in US-EU relations. The Atlantic is no longer the only thing separating them. It's also the internet. It's Christmas Day, a time for gifts and for loved ones. Across the world, communities mark Christmas in different ways. Even stock market investors have their own tradition. It's called the Santa Claus Rally. Now, this is a pattern seen in stock markets during Christmas every year. A rally window opens on December 24th each year. That's just before the Christmas break, and it continues well into the new year. This time, it will run until the 5th of January 2026. And why does this trading window matter? Because stocks, especially in the US, tend to rise during these days. So what is Santa bringing to the markets this year? Let's take a look, starting with the US markets. This year, the Santa rally lived up to the hype. The markets are closed today for Christmas, but yesterday was the first day of the rally window. And two of America's biggest stock indices did not disappoint. They ended the day's trade with record closing numbers. Look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It tracks America's top 30 companies. It rose by 0.6%. And this number may sound small, but in real money terms, 0.6% amounts to billions of dollars in gain. According to one estimate, the Dow gained close to $200 billion. Next, we have the S&P 500. Like the name suggests, this index tracks America's top 500 companies. Yesterday, the S&P gained by 0.32%. And how much is that? More than $1 billion, going by one report. These gains suggest optimism. So what is driving this optimism? Reports say two factors have contributed to the rally. First is the AI stocks. They have rebounded. Names like Nvidia, Oracle, Alphabet. These companies are announcing new deals or rolling out new AI models. And that has created some momentum, at least in the short term. So that's the first factor. Second, America's strong growth numbers are helping. We told you about this yesterday. The US economy grew by 4.3% in the last quarter. That's from July to September, 4.3% growth. These GDP numbers have made investors optimistic, and that is showing in the US markets. What about the rest of the world? Well, the sentiment is mixed. In other markets, the mood is not as festive. Britain's FTSE 100 was down by 0.2%. Japan's Nikkei fell by 0.1%. South Korea's Kospi slipped 0.2%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng fared slightly better. It gained by 0.2% yesterday. And what about India? Well, in India, the mood is subdued. Yesterday, both the Sensex and the Nifty closed in the red. The Sensex was down by over 100 points. The Nifty fell by close to 40 points. So a slight dip. There's no Santa rally in Indian stocks yet. But overall, it hasn't been a bad year for Indian markets. Barring yesterday's dip, the Sensex and the Nifty have been trading close to record highs. The Sensex tracks India's top 30 companies. These stocks are market leaders in key sectors of the economy, from banking to energy to technology and manufacturing. And the Nifty is a broader index. It tracks India's top 50 major companies. Together, these two indices reflect India's biggest businesses and their performance. So how did they perform in 2025? Well, this year, Indian stocks gained by around 9.5%, which is a good return overall. More importantly, it shows stability in the markets. The stocks that investors remain invested. Despite some churn in the short term, they are confident about Indian markets in the long term. That's the larger message. So to sum it up, the Santa rally has been uneven this year. Wall Street started strong. Indian markets are holding steady. But in other major markets, the results are a mixed bag. Investors will be watching these trends closely because while the Santa rally may be short-lived, it could shape sentiment going into 2026.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
To look at it, and viewers, we're going to deep dive this for another 10 minutes. I'm going to move on because we're going to be joined by Noah Tishby, who focuses on Zionist activism, founding the advocacy organization Act for Israel in 2011. In 2021, she published her first book, Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth. She served as the special envoy for combating anti-Semitism and the delegitimization of Israel for 1 year from 2022 to 2023. We're going to now speak to her about the common enemy, Islamism that bleeds both India and Israel. We're going to ask her if there is some validity to the, quote, action, reaction, unquote, thesis that is extended by left liberals to contextualize Islamism and its spread. So thank you very much, Noah Tishby, for joining us. You've spoken about Islamist extremism targeting Israel. But do you see the same ideological playbook now being deployed against other open societies like India, which are plural, secular, and democratic?
Absolutely. I have spoken up against this because it has been targeting Israel for many, many, many decades, as it has been targeting India. So yes, Islamism is targeting open societies, but not just open societies. Sadly, it's targeting anything and everything that isn't radical Islam. And you very well know what this can do. You've seen in April the terrorist attack that happened in India. You know exactly what this is. So I've been saying this for a very, very long time, way before October 7th, that Israel is the front line of a worldwide war on liberal values. And if anything happens to Israel, the West is next. And this is coming not because I am inventing this or thinking about this myself. It's coming because it's exactly what they say that they're about to do. And they're doing this right now, which is why countries like Israel and India need to stand together against this radical threat that is threatening all of us.
Well, India and Israel both face hostility from Islamist movements that reject secularism outright. There are many examples. Is this less about specific policies and more about an ideological war against open civilizations?
Absolutely. And it is not just against open civilization. Again, it's against anything that isn't Islamist and radical Islam. It's against women. It's against LGBTQ plus community. It's against anything that stands against them. So this is something that is not just this Israel's war or India's war. It's definitely not about anti-Semitism or about anything other than Western values, liberal values, plural values that we all hold so dear. We need to be very careful and fight.
The conflict between Thailand and Cambodia is back in the headlines. A new controversy has taken center stage and it has led to reactions from beyond the region. The controversy involves the demolition of a statue of a Hindu deity. Cambodia has accused Thailand of destroying a statue of Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is one of the principal deities of the Hindu religion. He is revered across South and Southeast Asia as the preserver and protector of the universe. Now, the statue in question was built in 2014 near the Priya Vihar temple. This is a 12th century Hindu temple. It is at the center of a territorial dispute between Thailand and Cambodia. Both countries have staked claim to it. Both say that this territory belongs to them. They're fighting over this piece of land. And it is in this contested zone that the statue stood. Cambodia says the statue was located in this territory. It says the demolition took place on Monday, about 100 meters from the border with Thailand.
We condemn the destruction of ancient temples and statues that are worshipped by Buddhist and Hindu followers.
Cambodia says this is not an isolated incident and that in the past, Thai forces have damaged several ancient temples along the border. Thailand, of course, has denied this, but the video of the demolition has since been widely circulated on social media and it has sparked widespread anger and diplomatic reactions. India, for one, has condemned this. New Delhi says such acts are disrespectful and they hurt the sentiments of devotees around the world.
Hindu and Buddhist deities are deeply revered and worshipped by people across the region as part of a shared civilization heritage. Notwithstanding territorial claims, such disrespectful acts hurt the sentiments of followers around the world and should not take place. We once again urge the two sides to return to dialogue and diplomacy.
So New Delhi is urging calm. It is calling for both sides to restore peace. But how is Thailand reacting to this controversy? Well, Bangkok has offered a detailed clarification. Thai officials say the demolition was not meant to target religion. They say the structure was not a registered religious site. Rather, it was a later addition. It was a symbol to assert Cambodian sovereignty over the territory.
The actions taken to remove said structure were not motivated by religion, belief, or any intent to disrespect sacred symbols or any faith. The operation was carried out solely as part of area administration and security management, following the restoration of control over Thai sovereignty.
Thailand's caretaker Prime Minister says the controversy should be seen in the context of a much larger conflict.
A destroyed statue cannot be compared with the limbs our soldiers have lost, nor can it be compared with acts of desecration. I would not make such a comparison at all.
The timing of this controversy is also significant. Thailand and Cambodia are already locked in a serious border standoff. Their long-running dispute reignited earlier this month. It shattered a truce brokered by US President Donald Trump. Military confrontation has since been reported across multiple points. The clashes have left more than 40 people dead and around 1 million people displaced on both sides of the border. Several villages have been evacuated and entire communities have been caught in the crossfire. Tourism, which is a key source of revenue, has taken a hit in both the countries. And now the statue demolition is exacerbating tensions. Yesterday, Thai and Cambodian military officials had a meeting. They're trying to de-escalate tensions. The talks are expected to go on for at least 3 days. And if they are successful, both sides could likely sign a ceasefire later this week. We'll be tracking this one for you. Our next story is from Algeria. It's a country in North Africa. For more than a century, Algeria was ruled by France. France invaded Algeria in 1830 and colonized it for 132 years. That period was marked by land seizures, forced displacements, torture, and mass killings. It ended only after a bloody war of independence in 1962. Why are we talking about this history today? Because it has come back to the center of politics. Yesterday, Algeria passed a major law. It declared France's colonial rule a crime. The law calls for an official apology from Paris, and it also demands reparations for colonial-era abuses. France has pushed back against this law, calling the move quote-unquote hostile, but Algeria says its national memory is not negotiable. And look at the timing of this move. Ties between Paris and Algiers are already under strain and have already been under strain in recent months. This new law only adds fuel to that. Here's a report.
Algeria has reopened a chapter many thought was closed, not through negotiations or quiet diplomacy, but through its parliament. This week, lawmakers gathered in Algiers for a rare unanimous vote. They passed a law That law declared French colonial rule a crime. Inside the chamber, the moment was charged. Members waved national flags, chanted slogans, and applauded as the bill was approved. The law places legal responsibility on France for its colonial past in Algeria. It also calls for an official apology. And it demands reparations for the damages caused during more than a century of colonial rule.
We have the political will to condemn French colonization for the indescribable crimes it committed against the Algerian people during the French occupation of Algeria, and to tell France and the French state to bear the responsibility for the crimes committed by colonial France against the Algerian people.
To understand the weight of this vote, you have to look back. France invaded Algeria in 1830. What followed after was 132 years of colonial rule. Algeria was treated as part of France. But its indigenous population lived under a different system. Land was seized, political rights were denied, economic power rested with European settlers. That rule ended only after a brutal war of independence between 1954 and 1962. Algiers says 1.5 million people were killed. French historians give lower estimates, but the violence left deep scars on both sides. Now, Algeria says that history can no longer be managed quietly.
Today, when we refer to criminalizing this colonization, which is a precedent in the history of criminalizing, it means that it will have significant repercussions across Africa.
The timing of the law matters too. Relations between Algeria and France are already strained. Tensions rose last year after Paris recognized Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara. Algeria supports the Polisario Front and their demand for self-determination. That disagreement reopened diplomatic fault lines. It was followed by arrests, expulsions, and stalled dialogue. Against that backdrop, this vote sends a pointed signal. France has condemned the move. Its foreign ministry called the law hostile and warned it could undermine efforts to repair relations. French President Emmanuel Macron has previously described colonization in Algeria as a crime against humanity. But he has stopped short of offering an apology. Algerian lawmakers say that's not longer.
Regarding the law criminalizing colonization, we will demand reparations in the future for the resources that were looted and plundered from Algeria.
Legally, the law does not bind France. It carries no international enforcement. But politically, it matters. It hardens Algeria's position and narrows the space for compromise. The vote is also being watched beyond Paris. Across Africa, demands are growing for recognition of colonial-era crimes, and the return of artifacts, remains, and archives. Algeria's law does not compel action or change the international law, but it draws a line. It pulls colonial history back into the center of modern politics.
Now let's talk about Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced a major shift. He wants Israel to produce more of its own weapons and rely less on foreign suppliers. Netanyahu has unveiled a $110 billion plan. The money will go into expanding Israel's arms industry. Netanyahu says Israel must reduce reliance, and I'm quoting, even on friends. Observers see this as a reference to the United States. You see, the US is Israel's largest military partner. Just this year, they gave over $3 billion in military aid to Israel. But Israel now says it cannot afford to depend on others. Does that mean the Israelis are planning to ditch American arms? Here's a report.
Israel is signaling a major shift in its defense strategy. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced a massive investment, $110 billion, spread over the next 10 years. Netanyahu says the money will go into building an independent Israeli arms industry. He made the announcement at a military ceremony. The Israeli Prime Minister said the goal is clear: to reduce its dependence on external suppliers, including close allies.
These are not just words. A few weeks ago, together with the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Finance, and the teams present here, I approved a total of 350 billion shekels over the next decade to build an independent armaments industry for the State of Israel. We want to reduce our dependence on any external party, including allies. The best minds in the defense industries are working on developing weapons systems that will ensure Israel's advantage on the future battlefield.
That statement has drawn attention because Israel's closest military partner is the United States. For decades, Washington has been Israel's main arms supplier and its biggest defense backer. This year alone, the U.S. provided Israel with $3.3 billion in military funding. On top of that, Washington also provided funding for missile defense cooperation. The defense relationship is long-standing and deeply embedded. Much of Israel's military hardware is American-made, from aircraft to missiles and advanced defense systems. So why does Israel now want to go it alone? Since the Gaza conflict began in 2023, several countries have cut off arms supplies to Israel. Some imposed outright embargoes. Others introduced near-total bans. Among them are Spain, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Slovenia. Outside Europe, countries like Canada and Japan also restricted military trade. These moves strained Israel's access to weapons and spare parts. They also exposed vulnerabilities in supply chains. Netanyahu has acknowledged this risk in the past. He said Israel's military resources have been under strain, and that reliance on foreign suppliers carries risks, especially during prolonged conflict. That thinking now shapes policy. Israel plans to invest heavily in domestic weapons production. Still, Israel's new direction raises questions, especially about its relationship with Washington. Netanyahu has not said Israel will abandon American weapons, and U.S. military aid continues to flow. But the language matters. Reducing dependence, even on friends, signals a change in tone. It suggests Israel wants options, and possibly leverage. As Israel builds its own arms industry, its ties with the U.S. will face a new test.
It's holiday season across the globe, and that means one thing: mouth-watering dishes from baked goods to roasts. 'Tis the season to tuck in. And if you're looking for recipes on the internet or trying to find the perfect pie tip, chances are you've come across hundreds of recipes. Some sound delicious, others do not make sense at all. And that's because of artificial intelligence. You see, AI is turning heartwarming recipes into slop. But why is technology doing that, and how can you avoid a cooking disaster? Our next report tells you.
The holiday season is supposed to smell like butter, cinnamon, roasted turkey, not regret. But in 2025, finding a recipe online has started to feel like playing culinary roulette, because AI isn't just writing captions anymore, it's writing recipes. And the result has a name: slop. Not soup, not stew, slop. It happens when AI grabs ingredients from one recipe. It then borrows cooking steps from another, timing from a third, comments from Reddit, and vibes from Pinterest. It then blends it into something that has never ever been cooked by a human being. A turkey recipe that's 70% sugar, 10% seasoning, 20% existential crisis. Cookies that dissolve into syrup puddles, and cakes that bake for days. So why is AI so bad at this? It's because it doesn't understand food. It doesn't understand chemistry, texture, timing, or why you sear meat before roasting. It just sees patterns in text. But why then are AI recipes suddenly taking over the internet? It began earlier this year when Google rolled out AI summaries inside search. Instead of clicking a real recipe blog, users started reading AI-generated summaries directly on the results page. It's convenient, but is it edible? The jury is still out. Google says AI overviews are just a helpful starting point, a place to begin your cooking journey. But tell that to the home cooks who followed AI instructions to the T. And this is where it gets murkier. Recipe creators spend years testing dishes. They adjust texture, temperature, moisture, crumb structure, seasoning balance. AI doesn't know that. It only knows patterns in text. Also, it could be a food safety hazard. AI often gives wrong temperatures, especially for poultry, a leading cause of foodborne illness. Independent food creators are already sounding the alarm. They have watched in horror as platforms like Google, Facebook, and Pinterest turned into recipe minefields. AI-generated recipe websites are now ranking on Google, copying photos, copying brand names, copying trust, but not copying accuracy. One blogger lost 80% of her website traffic in the last 2 years. And here's the irony, AI may be flooding the internet. But the more people interact with it, the less they trust it. In a survey of 3,000 adults, nearly half said AI content is less trustworthy than human-made content. And baking cookbook sales up 80% this year. Not AI cookbooks, real ones. So this holiday season, people seem to be going back to the basics. Back to scribbled family notebooks, back to flour-dusted pages, back to voices, not overviews. Because cooking isn't just a sequence of steps. It's trial, error, memory, instinct. It's you and millions across the globe adjusting the recipe when the dough feels a little off. AI can mimic the recipe, but it can't mimic the moment.
We know Christmas as a festival, a day of joy, celebration and togetherness. But Christmas has a political side too. It is featured in ceasefires, it has shaped diplomatic talks, and it has coincided with conflicts. Tonight we'll tell you how. In the summer of 1914, the First World War broke out. On one side were the Allies, that's the UK, France and Russia. On the other side were the Central Powers, that's Germany and Austria-Hungary. This is the First World War. Most soldiers thought the fighting would end soon, but the war dragged on to December. And it wasn't like the high-tech fighting that you see today. This was brutal trench warfare, bloody, cold and muddy. In early December, the Pope called for a holiday ceasefire, but neither side agreed. And on the ground, there was fatigue. On December 23rd, German soldiers placed trees outside their trenches. They sang Christmas carols like Silent Night. On the other side, the Allied soldiers responded. They sang carols of their own. Then on Christmas Eve, the orders came. Not from London or Berlin, but from low-ranking officers on both sides. They asked their men to not fire unless fired upon. And then came Christmas morning. German soldiers emerged from their trenches without guns, and the British soldiers did the same. They met in the buffer zone, exchanged gifts, and played football. Now remember, this was not an official ceasefire. It was unofficial and localized. The guns fell silent along 2/3 of the Western front line. That's how powerful the spirit was. Since then, Christmas truces have become a thing, especially for European conflicts. Though the Russia-Ukraine conflict has been an exception, we haven't had a Christmas ceasefire since the war started. There was a push earlier this month, but Russia did not agree, and that's something that the Pope has lamented.
Truly, one of the things that causes me great sadness is the fact that apparently Russia has rejected the request for a truce. Once again, I make this request to all people of goodwill to observe, at least on the feast of the birth of the Savior, a day of peace.
Well, there could be calendar issues here. The West celebrates Christmas on the 25th of December, but Russia follows the Julian calendar, and according to that calendar, Christmas falls on the 7th of January. Perhaps that explains the deadlock. Our next Christmas moment is from the American War of Independence. The year was 1776. George Washington was leading his soldiers against the British. Leading up to Christmas, he suffered major setbacks. Months ago, he'd been routed from New York. So in December, George Washington devised a plan. He would take 5,400 soldiers to launch a surprise attack. How? By crossing the half-frozen Delaware River on Christmas night. He began crossing at around 11 p.m. The next morning, he surprised the British forces in New Jersey. All of them had been celebrating the night before. Some accounts say they were groggy and drunk. Basically, easy pickings for Washington. That victory turned the tide of the war. And in these stories, Christmas was a unifying or rallying moment. But sometimes it's also been controversial, like in the Soviet Union. The Soviets were famously anti-religious. They called religion the opium of the masses. So in 1928, they banned Christmas. December 25th was a normal working day. The Bethlehem Star was replaced by the Communist Star. Carols were replaced by songs about Lenin, and Santa Claus was replaced by Dead Moroz, meaning Grandfather Frost. And all this imagery played out in propaganda as well. Look at some of these Soviet postcards from the 1970s. They show Grandfather Frost on a flying carpet, and beside him, Soviet planes and spaceships. It was Moscow's propaganda message on the space race. And even in recent years, we've seen Christmas shaping talks and deadlines. Consider the Brexit negotiations. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson promised to deliver a Brexit deal before Christmas. Get it done by Christmas, that was his slogan. So is this deliberate or just a coincidence? Frankly, that's hard to say. Christmas is a universally understood time period. Everyone knows it comes in the end of December, which makes it a natural deadline. At the same time, it's a period of lull. People are home and tend to stay away from the news. So it opens up a window for quiet diplomacy without the eyeballs. And of course, it's highly symbolic. A Halloween peace deal doesn't sound impressive, but a Christmas peace deal does. It lends religious and cultural significance to the moment. Our thoughts? Well, if it brings about peace and progress, go ahead by all means.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
To look at it, and viewers, we're going to deep dive this for another 10 minutes. I'm going to move on because we're going to be joined by Noah Tishby, who focuses on Zionist activism, founding the advocacy organization Act for Israel in 2011. In 2021, she published her first book, Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth. She served as the special envoy for combating anti-Semitism and the delegitimization of Israel for 1 year from 2022 to 2023. We're going to now speak to her about the common enemy, Islamism, that bleeds both India and Israel. We're going to ask her if there is some validity to the, quote, action, reaction, unquote, thesis that is extended by left liberals to contextualize Islamism and its spread. So thank you very much, Noah Tishby, for joining us. You've spoken about Islamist extremism targeting Israel. But do you see the same ideological playbook now being deployed against other open societies like India, which are plural, secular, and democratic?
Absolutely. I have spoken up against this because it has been targeting Israel for many, many, many decades, as it has been targeting India. So yes, Islamism is targeting open societies, but not just open societies. Sadly, it's targeting anything and everything that isn't radical Islam. And you very well know what this can do. You've seen in April the terrorist attack that happened in India. You know exactly what this is. So I've been saying this for a very, very long time, way before October 7th that Israel is the front line of a worldwide war on liberal values. And if anything happens to Israel, the West is next. And this is coming not because I am inventing this or thinking about this myself. It's coming because it's exactly what they say that they're about to do. And they're doing this right now, which is why countries like Israel and India need to stand together against this radical threat that is threatening all of us.
Well, India and Israel both face hostility from Islamist movements that reject secularism outright. There are many examples. Is this less about specific policies and more about an ideological war against open civilizations?
Absolutely. And it is not just against open civilization. Again, it's against anything that isn't Islamist and radical Islam. It's against women. It's against...
The Christmas spirit is lighting up across the world. From churches to space stations, billions are celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ today. In India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended Christmas prayers at church. In the Vatican, bells rang out at St. Peter's Basilica as the Pope led the Christmas Eve Mass. In New York, the skyline lit up in red and green. And high above the earth, astronauts on board the International Space Station put on Santa hats and sent Christmas wishes home. So one day celebrated in countless ways. Here's a report.
Christmas this year is lighting up the scenes across the world. From early morning prayers to midnight masses, from city skylines to quiet churches. December 25th is unfolding differently everywhere. In India, the day began with worship. At the Cathedral Church of the Redemption in New Delhi, hymns and carols filled the air. Prime Minister Narendra Modi attended the Christmas service, joining members of the Christian community. Later in the day, Prime Minister Modi even extended his wishes to the people.
मैं देश और दुनिया को क्रिसमस की शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। भारत में भी करोड़ों ईसाई परिवार आज उत्सव मना रहे हैं। क्रिसमस का ये उत्सव सभी के जीवन में खुशियां लाए।
As the clock moved west, the celebrations grew larger. At the Vatican, St. Peter's Square filled with thousands of faithful. Pope Leo led Christmas Eve Mass, his first since becoming pontiff. In his message earlier on Thursday, he urged courage for peace in Ukraine and highlighted the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Let us entrust the entire European continent to the Prince of Peace, asking him to continue to inspire a spirit of community and cooperation, in fidelity to its Christian roots and history, and in solidarity with and acceptance of those in need.
In Paris, Christmas came with a sense of return. Notre Dame hosted its second Christmas Eve Mass since reopening. The cathedral, once scarred by fire, stood full again.
Tonight, the Lord brings us together from every continent. And in a sense, Christ's words are being fulfilled here as he came together into one, the dispersed children of God.
Across the Atlantic, the mood was brighter. New York lit up in red and green. The Empire State Building marked the day as families filled the streets and shops. In Bethlehem, Christmas carried deeper weight. Midnight Mass returned to the Church of the Nativity after 2 years of conflict. Thousands of Palestinians and tourists filled the city as a fragile ceasefire holds between Israel and Hamas.
I was here last year, and the atmosphere was full of sadness, but today it's full of happiness.
In Ukraine, Christmas was marked far from home. President Volodymyr Zelensky used his Christmas message to repeat one word: peace. In the country, displaced families gathered in shelters. Volunteers served traditional meals.
I really want everything to be beautiful, for our boys, our defenders, to be celebrating Christmas. And for them to come home already. Enough is enough.
Meanwhile, in Russia, the Kremlin said President Vladimir Putin exchanged Christmas greetings with US counterpart Donald Trump. And above the planet itself, Christmas reached even further. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station marked the day in orbit, sending wishes back to Earth.
From all of us aboard the International Space Station to all of you, we would like to wish you the happiest of holiday season, the happiest of Christmas, Merry Christmas.
Different places and different celebrations, but one shared feeling. Across continents, Christmas was marked in prayer, gathering, and quiet moments of reflection.
Imagine being able to call up your president on Christmas Eve. Cool, right? Now imagine that president being Donald Trump. Suddenly, not so cool. Yesterday, Trump took over the US military hotline, the same hotline that children ring up asking about Santa Claus. And the exchanges? Better than any Christmas comedy. From talking about infiltrating Santas to high IQ children, it was a classic Trump performance. This time on Christmas.
We want to make sure that he's not infiltrated, that we're not infiltrating into our country a bad Santa. You want what?
A Kindle.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good. Well, you must be a high IQ person. We need more high IQ people in the country.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. As the world celebrates Christmas, we leave you with visuals from across the globe. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to the Late Night Edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jam. Well, big breaking news coming in from Bangladesh, where the Islamist mob is on a rampage in the last few weeks. Now, what we are learning is that the Bangladesh government has released a statement on the death of Amrit Mondal in Rajbari. The government has said that it was not a communal attack, adding that it arose out of violence linked to extortion and criminal activities. The Bangladesh government says Amrit Mondal was a